Oh, it is. It is another episode of Five Rounds here on the Five Reasons Sports Network. I am Alex Donno. We're going to be joined in a few minutes by Jason from ParamountSports.com, who is going to help us break down UFC 274 from a betting perspective. This one just got more challenging today to handicap. I don't know what the hell we do with the main event now. So for those just tuning in, if you missed this today, Charles Oliveira, lightweight champion, is or was set to defend his lightweight title against Justin Gaethje this Saturday, UFC 274. They had the weigh-ins this morning. They give you a 2-hour window to make weight. And remember, champions don't get any grace when it comes, or title fights, I should say, whether you're the champion or the challenger. You don't get any grace on the scale. Like if you're fighting for the championship belt at 155 pounds, you can't be any heavier than 155 on the nose. If it's a non-title fight, they give you a full pound of grace. If you weigh in at 156 in a non-title fight, they allow it, right? But in a title fight, they draw the line in the sand right at the limit for every weight class: 155, 170, 185, 205, etc. And Charles Oliveira had the 2-hour window this morning to make weight. He shows up and you can get on the scale pretty much any time during that window. So the earlier you do it, the better, right? You step on the scale earlier, then you've got more time to replenish and rehydrate before you fight the next day. Oliveira used the entire time to get on the scale, half-pound heavy. They give him an extra hour. He's still a half-pound heavy. Unprecedented thing has now happened. UFC lightweight champion Charles Oliveira is the champion no longer. They stripped him. They stripped him of his, or they forced him to vacate, I think is the proper language. Doesn't really make a difference, but I want to get the facts right. He was forced to vacate his title. And here's where it gets wild, okay? First of all, this has literally never happened before. I mean, you've had people forced to vacate belts before for various other reasons, but never have you had a UFC reigning champion miss weight and then get forced to vacate. This is a historical first time ever. And yeah, it's an embarrassment, honestly, right? I mean, the UFC has been around since the 90s. And to be the first champion ever, think about how many title fights the UFC has put on. Right? We're 274 pay-per-views into this adventure now. How many title fights they put on over the years? This is the first time a champion has ever been forced to vacate for missing weight. So this is a huge embarrassment for Oliveira. And it gets a little bit weirder here because the fight is still going to happen. And we could have a new UFC lightweight champion crowned tomorrow night, or we might not. Because if Charles Oliveira wins the fight, nothing happens. He's not eligible to win his belt back because he didn't make weight. But if Justin Gaethje wins, Justin Gaethje is eligible and will be crowned the lightweight champion of the UFC. So I got to be honest here. You know, I like Charles Oliveira. I enjoy watching him fight. I do enjoy watching Justin Gaethje fight, though, even more because the guy is just... he just offers a plethora of violence. Like, it's so much fun watching Justin Gaethje fight. Prior to this whole debacle, I was very slightly favoring Oliveira to win. Now I'm not so sure because you think about the psychological damage that's been done here, knowing he's just had to vacate his belt. And this is a huge embarrassment for him. So I don't know how that affects the psyche. And he's still got to go out there and fight tomorrow. So I don't know how that affects the psyche. That's number one. And I see our guy Jason's ready. I'm going to hop him in just one moment to help us break this down from a betting standpoint. And then the other part of it physically is, you know, Gaethje made weight right away early on in the window, no problem. He had all that time to replenish and rehydrate, whereas Oliveira had like an extra 3 hours to, you know, probably have to sweat himself out like crazy. And, you know, I think Justin Gaethje, tweeted out that by the time Oliveira failed at the scale for the final time, Gaethje had already gained back 10 pounds. Like, he had already gained back 10 pounds of hydration. So that was a big head start for Justin Gaethje. I'm not saying it's like definitely going to be the difference between one guy winning and one guy losing, but that's a big factor. Like the physical advantage and the mental advantage that Justin Gaethje has, it's definitely there. And from a fan standpoint, because I'm a UFC fan, I was probably going to be rooting for Gaethje anyway, but now I'm definitely rooting for Gaethje because if Charles Oliveira wins the fight, it's like, all right, congratulations. You already embarrassed yourself on the scale and you can't even win the belt back, right? Like the only way we see the belt around somebody's waist at the end of the pay-per-view tomorrow night is if Justin Gaethje wins. And what an afternoon I'm sure you've had. Our good pal Jason from ParamountSports.com. So Jason, first and foremost, is this fight even on the board right now? Because I got to admit, I'm looking at a page with betting odds for tomorrow night at BetUS.com, and I don't currently see, unless I'm missing it here, I don't currently see the main event even on the list.
Where I'm looking, it's actually listed, but it's not listed properly. So it may be the same on your site. I see that the odds, it was about Oliveira was a minus 190, and it looks like it's dropped to minus 140 approximately now.
Wow.
So it's
it's interesting that he's still slightly favored, Charles.
Yes. This is unprecedented territory. It's so hard to know how it's going to affect him mentally. What's in it for him to win this fight? And what's going to happen in the aftermath? Let's say Oliveira does win. He's no longer the champion. Then what happens?
Yeah.
Makhachev fights Gaethje won't get another shot if he loses.
Maybe he'd fight. Yeah, maybe Makhachev would fight maybe the winner of the Ferguson Chandler fight on this card, and I don't know. I'm thinking this through aloud, Jason. As are you, because I don't think Dana White has made any declaration on what happens next. But I wonder if Charles Oliveira wins tomorrow night, despite not being able to get his belt back tomorrow. Do you think if he wins tomorrow night, then the UFC would say, okay, like this guy didn't actually lose the belt in the octagon, so we're going to let him, for his next fight, we're going to let him fight for the vacant belt, maybe against Makhachev? Or do you think Dana White would just be so pissed he would say, no, like I need to keep this guy out of the title picture for a while?
Dana White is known to be a little vindictive. So the right thing to do, because Oliveira has been such a professional his whole career. I mean, he's 32 years old. He's been in the UFC for 12 of those years. I would hope that they would give him another opportunity, but this is a big mess up. This is not the way he wanted to get an English-speaking champion. This is not the way he wanted to.
No, that's very true. And watch like magic, I've just made an octagon appear in the background here. This is, by the way, you're watching on 5 Reasons Sports Network Live, 5 rounds. Alex Donno joined here by Jason from Paramount Sports, who Jason puts in so much study from a betting perspective on these fight cards. And so, okay, Jason, I got to ask you, because we talked about the psychological factor and the physical factor. Were you going to, and maybe you had a prop or something, but were you going to bet somebody on the money line for this fight before this weigh-in disaster? And if so, has this changed your lean?
Yes and yes. What I'm going to do is I'm not quite sure. I'd like to see how Oliveira looks later tonight. Everything about his body language, even at the press conference yesterday, he looked a little bit off, but fighters tend to be off when they're cutting weight. But everything about him looked off. Maybe it was just disappointment. And when it gets to the fight time, he's going to be ready to do all the things he needs to do. But you can see from his body language that he was off. It could, like I said, it could just be disappointment.
Yeah, no,
embarrassment, as somebody just said.
Yeah, no, it totally. It's and thank you, Mitchell, for watching this. I especially appreciate Mitchell watching this, because I know he's passing up some pregame Miami Heat content to watch this pregame fight content as well. And I think the reason why Mitchell's watching is he wants to make some money, and he knows that Jason from ParamountSports.com can help us do that. How do you expect, Jason, main event? And I guess, like, for argument's sake, let's assume like Oliveira looks pretty much like his normal self, just for argument's sake. I think that this could be a really dynamite fight because both of these guys are action fighters. Oliveira, he's a really slick, powerful striker. He's going to be the better submission fighter. Gaethje, though, his heart is through the freaking roof. These guys can both take punishment and dish it out. Gaethje, incredible pressure and pace. Like this had belt or not, this has the makings of like an all-time clash. So like, how do you expect things to play out, assuming Oliveira is close to 100%?
Well, to me, Gaethje only has one path to victory in this fight, and that's through strikes by TKO. I don't see him winning a 5-round decision. I see him either finishing Oliveira or getting submitted. Frankly, the only way for him to win this fight is to get really close, and Oliveira is the last person that you want to get close to you because he has just so many ways of winning this fight. And I don't like what I saw of Gaethje in the Khabib fight. That was the first time that I saw him in a situation where all of his confidence was stripped for him. And I think when Oliveira takes him down, that the same thing may happen. And I could still see a submission in this fight.
I like it. By the way, I like this message here from Doug on weight cutting. He says, my cousin was an Olympic wrestler. That first of all, that's awesome. And he was always spitting into cups and wearing rubber suits to make weight. He said it was hell. Bro, I never wrestled, but a couple of my closest friends in high school were on the high school wrestling team. And some of the toughest SOBs I knew. And they did exactly what Doug was talking about. I can remember them like running around the track at my school with those like vests that were like made of like the garbage can material and like he said, literally spitting into cups. I don't know if it seems like a terrible thing for high school kids to be doing, like to be cutting weight. So I don't know if the landscape in high school wrestling is the same as it was like back in those days. But those were some of the toughest SOBs that I know. And then another thing, Jason, I want to add to this is what was really surprising about Oliveira missing weight. And I know it wasn't by much, but you got to draw the line somewhere, right? Like, you can't just say, well, we'll give him a half a pound, then why not full pound and a half? It's your responsibility as a champion to make weight. Somebody pointed this out to me a couple hours ago. Oliveira, I think early this morning before he stepped on the scale, even tweeted about how his weight was good, that he was on point. And so I don't know what happened there. I don't know if maybe the scale that he had in his hotel room was saying something different than the actual commission scale, which is the one that counts. But especially shocking to see a guy miss weight when he was tweeting about how his weight was good earlier that day.
Can they get a worse scale also to weigh these guys in? Does that look like it's exact to you when it's like that? Yeah, I think their social media is just part of the whole thing where they're always tweeting. They probably tweet that every single fight. And I'm sure he thought he was going to make weight. It's difficult to know what happened along the way. But imagine in the NFL, if all the players had to weigh in the day before a game and then play the next day. Imagine the effect that would have on them.
That's a great point.
Yeah, these guys are the toughest.
Yeah, no doubt about that. No doubt about that. So we have another title fight in the co-main event. And I know that, especially with everything going on in the main event, this one gets overshadowed a little bit. But I love watching Thug Rose Namajunas, who is a minus 215 favorite. I'm looking at odds, by the way, at betus.com, our official sports book. I'm looking at Rose minus 215 favorite against Carla Esparza at plus 170. What are you thinking for this one, Jason? Can Carla pull off the upset?
It's all going to depend on the takedown. That again, like Gaethje has one path to victory, Esparza has one path to victory. It served her well in the first fight, which was 8 years ago. So we're going to know right away. If she's able to get Rose down, she's going to be able to win this fight. Especially when it gets to the championship rounds, because Esparza usually does well in the third round of fights, even if she's losing at the beginning. And I think if Esparza is able to hang around that long, those last two rounds are going to be very difficult for Rose. Her best fights have been when she's able to get that early knockdown and win the first couple of rounds. I don't see her as able to fight from behind.
So moving, yeah. Do you have any lean of the place you think people should play on that fight?
Because of the line, I like Esparza.
Yeah.
Esparza is almost a plus 200 favorite. The odds keep creeping up. I think that's the only way to go. I can definitely see a path for her, which again would be a nightmare for the UFC. They've avoided this fight for 8 years because they didn't want it to happen, and that would be just imagine Dana White tomorrow night if Oliveira wins and Esparza wins. Imagine, just think about the difference in those two fights. You have Gaethje and Rose, you have Esparza and Oliveira, and a vacant lightweight title.
Oh, you know what? I think the first thing Dana would do is he would like call Conor McGregor and be like, "Can you please come back like next month so we could just we can make some easy money, cash some checks."
Could you imagine the Makhachev McGregor fight with all the background with Khabib? That would be huge.
That would be huge. And I'm a big Islam Makhachev fan, and so I would love that fight because I think he would pretty much do the same thing to Conor that Khabib did. Do you agree?
Yes, absolutely. I like almost anybody versus McGregor at this point.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. Now this, honestly, so the shame of the main event, the champion missing weight, Oliveira, that aside, this is an awesome fight card. Like this from top to bottom. This is one of my favorites. Like I love the fact that, and we're going to get to a couple of the early pay-per-view fights in a second. I love the fact that like this fight card, it's got something for like the people who just started watching the UFC yesterday. And it's also got something for people like me and like you who have been watching forever, right? When you think about having people like Joe Lozon and Shogun Hua on the card. But man, I think this Tony Ferguson, Michael Chandler fight could be awesome. I can understand why Chandler is heavily favored because, Ferguson he's been on the decline. And Chandler, he's got more ways to win, right? Because he's an excellent wrestler and he hits like a Mack truck. If this was the Ferguson of 3 years ago, it could be a different fight, I think. But Michael Chandler, I'm looking at minus 400 odds in favor of Chandler. Ferguson plus 300 underdog. And, I guess the odds makers don't expect this fight to be particularly long because the over-under is a round and a half. So do you think
Really?
like they do? Yeah. Do you think like they do that Chandler probably finishes this one pretty quickly, or do you see it differently?
I would take the over on that. Ferguson is very tough. If you look at his last 3 fights, 3 fights ago, he fought Gaethje in a main event fight. It took till round, I think it was the end of round 4, possibly round 5. He got hit with so many shots and Gaethje could not put him out. It was a standing knockout. And then in his last 2 fights against Dariush and his other fight, was it Makhachev? They had him down of 30 minutes of fight time. He was on his back for almost 24 minutes of 30 minutes, and neither guy could put him away. So I would take the over on that.
I like that a lot. Like that actually might be one of the low key better plays on this card. And and obviously, like as far as you don't get the best odds on it because it's over a round and a half at minus 190. But still, but like you said, I think that still seems like a pretty safe pick. I think
the one difference is Chandler does have one punch knockout, which I don't believe Gaethje really does. The only person who one punch knocked out was James Vick, who a lot of people did that to James Vick, so I don't think that's a good gauge. But yeah, I would take the over on that. I can very well see the fight go into a decision.
Do you? I could see that. I think this is an interesting comment here from Michael. Michael, this might be why you mentioned you've been losing money on a lot of cards. He says, "I love betting underdogs because anything can happen. Is that a? Do you ever, Jason, get kind of tempted towards underdogs in general sense? Because I think usually, like, because we all have kind of habits when you're betting on fight cards. My habit usually is, um, I'll pick a few heavy favorites if I think they're rightful heavy favorites, but I'll parlay them. Like I don't like I'm not one of these like I never, unless I'm like really desperate and I'm chasing at the end of the fight card. Like you'll never see me like betting a money line at like minus 350 or minus 450 or whatever. But sometimes I'll take some of those lopsided odds and I'll parlay them together. I don't necessarily make a habit out of betting underdogs unless I really feel strongly that they're going to get it done.
Well, every card has numerous underdog winners, and with the fact that a fight can be ended with one punch, it's not a bad proposition. Especially if your underdog is a person with one punch knockout power. And case in point, the last card, Andre Fili against Joe Anderson Brito, and Fili was almost I believe a minus 250 favorite. And Brito caught him in the first round, with a punch, I believe within the first minute. He was, I think, minus 1,400 or minus 2,200 for the first round KO.
Wow. Oh, my God. Please tell me you had that on your betting slip. Actually, if you did, you probably would be on your boat right now.
That actually ruined the parlay.
Oh.
That was the last leg of the parlay. No, I would like to say that we did.
Well,
the second biggest favorite on the card.
Wow. And well, you know what? I also one thing that I love about Paramount Sports, and I've had the privilege of getting to know you, and I've known Lee Sterling for a few years now very well. You guys are so transparent, right? Because every now and then I'll be listening to, because there's a lot of these handicappers out there who look, they'll buy time on radio stations, they'll put out their videos, and a lot of them they straight up lie. Like they'll go like 2-6 on a weekend, and then the next weekend, like, we won everything, baby. We made so much money. It's like, well, I actually paid attention to how you did last week, and no, you lost everything. But Lee Sterling and Jason here from ParamountSports.com, they do very well. I've made money with their picks, but they're transparent. Like if you guys have a shitty weekend, you'll say it. Like, yeah, we didn't have a very good weekend. Like, it is what it is. Transparency is the most important thing. Now, I absolutely love, and I talked about being kind of the old-time fight fan. I'm just going to jump around a little bit when I'm skipping one, but I'll get back to it on the main card. But the curtain jerker is awesome. I'm a big Joe Lozon fan. People may not know this if you've never chatted with the guy or been around him. He is one of the nicest people in the fight game, and he's an OG. Like I can remember watching Lozon fighting in the octagon like way back to like 2005. Like Joe Lozon's been around forever.
So a little bit about Joe Lozon. He was on the Ultimate Fighter, I think, season 5 in 2007. I believe he was coached by BJ Penn. Jens Pulver was coaching the other team, and Lozon had already beaten Pulver on the Ultimate Fighter.
I forgot about that.
He has to be in the top 5 all-time of performance bonuses in the UFC. Yeah. Very exciting fighter and a great guy, like you said, just a great guy.
Yeah, and I think this is actually pretty good matchmaking, right? Because Joe Lozon and Donald Cerrone, they're kind of in the same stages, right? Like they can still put on a great show, but they're not contenders anymore. Cerrone is favored. I mean, he's been, I guess, in slightly better form in recent couple of years, but Cerrone is a minus 180 favorite.
Cerrone, I believe, has lost his last 5 or 6 fights, actually.
Yeah.
With one no contest against, I can't remember the guy's name, Nico Price. He had a no contest, but I believe he's lost his last 5.
Wow.
I believe Lozon Cerrone is just a favorite because people don't know who Lozon is, the newcomers to the sport.
It could be.
There are certain fights, and when I watch with Lee, it's funny because there are certain fights I know exactly how the fight is going to go. And this is one of those fights that I feel like I know exactly how the script of the fight. Now, I don't know. The ending is yet to be written, but I feel like I have a really good grasp of how this is going to go. I'm going to give you a prop on this one. Joe Lozon for a first round knockout is plus 900.
Oh, If I can hit that, oh my gosh, I love that idea.
And Joe Lazone is a guy that comes out like a bat out of hell. I don't think he plans on fighting many more times. He's there for the entertainment. He's there for the performance bonus. And I see where he comes in there and just gives it his everything. And if he gets it, he gets it. If not, he's in trouble.
I love that. I love that. And I also, so you can get in the plus 900 range, Joe Lozon by, what was it, first round TKO?
First round TKO. It's actually dropped a little bit. It was higher. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Wow.
It was plus 1,200, I think, at one time.
And I agree with what you're saying about, I don't know how much longer he's actually going to do this. There are a couple of people like that on this card because, like,
Yes.
honestly, when I see that Shogun is still fighting and he's still on pay-per-view main cards, that's another one where I'm like, are we sure he's still doing this? Like, okay, I guess we're – and also, this is a weird one. So Shogun Hua against Ovince St. Preux. This is a rematch of what I recall. I haven't gone back and rewatched it yet, but from what I recall, not a particularly good fight. These guys fought 8 years ago. They fought back in 2014. I don't know why exactly the UFC wants to run this one back, but Ovince St. Preux. And I didn't watch the whole weigh-in. I only watched the debacle for Oliveira. But I remember hearing something today about how he did make weight, but that OSP didn't look very good stepping on the scale.
Didn't look great. He looked like there was no one behind the eyes. He looked he looked like he was there, but he wasn't there. But as you said, I don't know why this fight is on the card. I think it's just paying homage to an ex-champ, a swan song type of thing. I like Ovince St. Preux in this one.
Yeah,
pretty strongly. Yeah, who has not won a fight against a real opponent in a long time. I think 4 or 5 years. His last time out, he was finished. He tapped to strikes by Paul Craig, the jiu-jitsu specialist. And his last win was against Big Nog, one of the Nogs, who at the time I think was 42 or 43.
Yeah, I think it was Lil Nog. Yeah, which
Lil
is
Nog.
Yeah.
It's an awful fight. I don't think he's got anything left. Ovince St. Preux is on the decline as well, but I see him taking this one.
So, do you like it at these odds though? If he's about minus 260, like would you advise people to go in, or would you say maybe part of a parlay?
Part of a parlay, maybe with Chandler.
I like that. I like that a lot.
That's actually a fight I jumped on early when it was minus 125.
That's so way better.
Doubled, yes, it basically doubled.
Wow, I'm surprised it was ever that low. I definitely missed the boat on that one. Now I want to go to something in the prelims. You mentioned to me before the show specifically, and I think this is going to be an awesome fight. But and it's virtually a pick'em fight here. It's very close to that. Chaos Williams, Randy Brown, which is the final fight of the prelims. Williams minus 125. Randy Brown minus 105 is what I'm looking at betus.com. I could tell you're very excited for this one, Jason. Do you have a good lean on this one?
Well, I love just saying rude boy. I love Randy Brown. Has a lot of charisma, good fighter, great name. From Queens, New York, as I was way back in the day. Yeah, another fight. They did some great matchmaking on this card. A lot of fights are contrasting styles. The Rose, as far as Gaejthe Oliveira. There's another one that's a contrast in styles. When Brown gets in there, he's going to be the taller man, better jiu-jitsu, better all-around game. But Chaos Williams has that lethal power. And in order for Brown to win, he's got to get his hands on Williams. He's got to get his hands on Williams. Yes, almost messed up the names there. So he's got to get really close. And I think he may do well during the fight, but I believe at some point Chaos is going to catch him. And if you look at his previous opponents, it's not good if he catches you. So in this one, I think we got to play the KO.
I like it.
That would be the only way to go. You either have to go Brown by decision or Williams by KO, and we're leaning that way.
I'm gonna go Williams by KO. What kind of number can you get? I don't have the pro. I can open it up, but what about from you? What kind of number do you think you can get?
plus
Okay.
175, plus 180.
Okay. Yeah. I'm looking at I may be able to find better odds somewhere. I'm looking at or it may have moved a little bit. I'm looking at Chaos Williams by KO, TKO, DQ, or submission at plus 160. Or should I go specifically for knockout or should I go for any form of stoppage?
Well, he's never submitted anyone. I can't
Yeah.
really see it. I can't imagine that he'd even want to get on the
Okay, so
ground
there it
with
is. Yeah,
Brown.
one plus 175. If I take the submission out of it, I just go Chaos Williams by KO, TKO, or DQ. Like you said,
Yeah,
plus 175.
right. There are certain fighters that if they rock you, they'll get they'll get on your neck and rear naked choke you or something
I
like
call it the
that.
mercy kill.
Yes, yes, which is a great thing. But I don't see any situation where Williams wants to get on the ground with Brown. That's not a smart thing. When there's such a disparity, he's got. It would be, even if he knocks Brown down, he should not go and get on top of him. He should let him up.
Right.
I see a lot of fighters make that mistake. They'll knock somebody down, they'll get down with them, and next thing they know, they're tapping. When you have a such an advantage on the feet, don't go down. Let them back up. You can do that. But I've been frustrated many times by fighter IQ, but I think Williams knows enough not to do that.
Yeah, I gotta tell you, it's one of those things. It's like and every sport has like things that drive bettors crazy, like backdoor covers, garbage points, and stuff. But yeah, in fighting, it's like the big ones are just low fight IQ, and then obviously bad decisions, right? Because that's something that's not even really in the fighter's control. You could have somebody that looks like they clearly take 2 out of 3 rounds, and then 2 of the judges see it the other way, and you're completely screwed. It seems to
I,
happen
I
like
can
once every card, Jason.
I can go all night about the judging. I yeah, yeah, that's not. I'm not a fan of UFC judging. So don't leave it to the scorecards. Take the judges out, because if you put it in their hands, you never know what's going to happen. Never know. The Orlovsky decision 2 weeks ago or last week,
Yeah,
awful. He lost
terrible.
every round. I
Yep.
don't know how they saw him. Maybe one round, but no, that was just terrible.
Well, listen, but
So
before we wrap it up, sir. Sorry to cut you off, but I want to let you have the opportunity. Of course, a lot of people, they've seen Jason on the show before. You've seen Lee Sterling all over the place. ParamountSports.com. They've been great to us. Let the people know, Jason, what they can find at the website, especially when it pertains to the fights tomorrow night.
okay, if you go to ParamountSports.com and you go to the pick section, you'll see a 7-fight card for $47.
Oh
Just
wow,
very simple. Just
great
go
deal.
ParamountSports.com. And we're guaranteeing a winning card on this one. We feel very strongly about it. And so you can't lose when it's guaranteed, right?
You can't.
We stand behind what we
That's
do.
right. That's right. Well, I love that. Jason from ParamountSports.com. Thank you so much, man. And we should do this again for the next pay-per-view, because I think it's good. Obviously, a lot of people who watch the fights also like to wager, and sports betting is just blowing up, right? I mean, it's so many more. I mean, even now compared to a few years ago, so many more people are into it. So, and when you're paying $75 for a pay-per-view, you want to be able to make some of that money back, right?
You send the invitation, I'll be here.
I love it. Thanks so much, Jason. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thanks for having me.
I love that. That's really good. And before we go, my friends, because I know everyone wants to get into Heat basketball mode tonight, I'm going to be pumped for that one. Before we go, I want to remind you guys that, hey, if you want to wager on these fights, betus.com. They are the official sports book of Donno Daily and of 5 Rounds. Sign up at betus.com. It's a full-service sports book, fully available in Florida, by the way. Use our code when you sign up, 5RSN125. That's 5RSN125. They're going to give you a 125% sign-up bonus. It's the best bonus in the industry. I mean, I remember the first time that I deposited with my code last year, I put $200 in, and there was 450 in my account. They more than doubled my money. You can get a lot of mileage out of that, guys. You can bet on all the fights tomorrow night, including props for everything, live betting on all of it, by the way. Live betting just adds an extra dimension to it. So sign up today at betus.com with our code 5RSN125 and get a 125% sign up bonus. You bet, you win, you get paid. betus.com. And yeah, Mitch, I can tell you've been there. The terrible judging. It's like once per card it happens. And like not necessarily I lose a bet once per card because of it, but just when you watch all the fights, like once per card, there's just an awful, awful decision. It always happens. I tend to agree with Bruce here. Charles kind of deserves to get knocked out cold now, to be honest. Yeah, karma, right? He's going to be at a weakened physical state because Gaethje had a 3-hour head start to replenish that Oliveira didn't have because he missed weight. And I don't know what it does mentally, knowing, a few hours ago, he's the champion, and now you're forced to vacate your belt, and you still have to fight tomorrow night, and you can't even win the belt back if you win. Like I not necessarily saying it's the difference between winning and losing, but that gives at least a little bit of an edge to Gaethje, physical edge and mental edge, because Justin Gaethje can win the belt tomorrow night. Oliveira can't. If Oliveira wins the fight, nothing happens. If Gaethje wins the fight, Dana's putting that belt around his waist tomorrow night. Oh, Alex M. Thank you, sir. And if you popped in here late, first of all, thank you for even coming in, Alex, because I don't know what he was doing. No idea. But if you missed, we started a little bit early tonight, Alex, because I got to run in a few minutes, put my kid to bed a little bit later, read him stories. It's like a 2-hour process. All right. But if you missed the earlier part of the show, as soon as the replay goes up, as soon as we sign off, the replay is up. We started a little bit early, probably around 5:50, and we went through every fight on the main card and a prelim fight with Jason from ParamountSports.com for betting. He says, I feel terrible for Oliveira. He was a feel-good story. Yeah, listen, I guess I have some sympathy for him because, in life, we've all fucked up at times, right? Like we've all made mistakes or miscalculations. And so like, you can't always go and say, well, he deserves what he gets. Like nobody's perfect. Right. So I do have a little bit of sympathy for him, but who do you blame for this? You blame the man in the mirror, right? I mean, he's a UFC champion. He's been in the UFC since he was 20. I know that when he was down at 145, he had trouble making weight there. He's been money at 155 right up until this point. So you've got to do better. I don't know what he did wrong. I don't know what his miscalculation was cutting weight, but I mean, who do you blame if not the man in the mirror? So I guess on a human level, I have some sympathy, but at the same time, like, the reason why he's no longer champion and the reason why, even though they're still fighting tomorrow night, the main event loses some of its juice, it's Charles Oliveira's fault. It's his fault. So, I feel bad. I feel bad for him. I don't know if I feel terrible for him, if I could draw that line. I do feel bad for him, and I feel bad for me. So I'm going to pay $75 for that fight. And if Oliveira wins, it's the biggest letdown. Like I'm so rooting for Gaethje. I would have been rooting for Gaethje anyway, and I think I'm going to bet on Gaethje. But yeah, I'm so rooting for Gaethje now, knowing that only one guy can actually be the champion at the end of the night, and that is Justin Gaethje. All right, my friends, everybody enjoy the fights tomorrow night. That's number one. And I know we have Heat fans watching as well. Enjoy the Heat game tonight. Well, we're a little over an hour away from tip. Is there any update now? I think it's going to be a game time thing on Joel Embiid. I don't know. I've only been looking at fight stuff for the last 40 minutes, but all right, my friends, we will talk to you guys again. What day is today? Friday? I'll talk to you guys on Monday on another episode of Donno Daily, and then either next Thursday or Friday, we will do 5 rounds right here on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. See